Have you ever noticed that the moment you stop letting someone control you, they don't walk away, they adapt, they change their tone, they change their tactics? Because a manipulator doesn't crave connection, they crave control. And when they can't pull your strings in private anymore, they step into the shadows and try to pull them from a distance. It starts small. They stop arguing and start smiling. They act calm, even supportive. But their silence feels heavy. Their words feel rehearsed. Their energy shifts, and deep down you know it. They're not done. They're just planning differently. When control fails, they don't back off. They dig in deeper. Quietly, strategically, cruelly. They shame you in public. They rewrite the story. They pretend to be the victim. Because if they can't manipulate you, they'll try to manipulate how others see you. And that's where most people get pulled back in. Not by direct pressure, but by distortion. But you don't have to play that game. Stoicism teaches us how to hold the line, not through anger, not through retaliation, but with unshakable calm and precise awareness. You don't match their chaos. You don't correct every lie. You stand in truth, and that more than anything is what they can't handle. In this video, you'll learn 7 tactics manipulators use when they lose control, and how Stoic philosophy helps you dismantle each one, quietly, completely, without losing a single piece of yourself. So if you've ever felt the shift, that strange calm before the next storm, if someone close to you has started acting too nice after you set a boundary, if you're done being controlled, but not sure what to do next, stay with me. This might change how you respond forever. 1. They try to shame you publicly. When a manipulator realizes they can no longer control you in private, they don't stop. They escalate. They take the performance public. Suddenly, the jabs that were once whispered behind closed doors are now dropped in front of others. The guilt trips turn into jokes, the doubt becomes sarcasm. And every word is carefully placed, not to hurt you directly, but to chip away at how others see you. And this is a strategic shift. You're no longer reacting to private pressure, you're now facing public humiliation, and they know exactly what they're doing. They say things like, "Wow, someone's feeling themselves lately. We should get you a trophy for showing up on time 2 days in a row." Or they speak over you in meetings, dismiss your ideas, and try to make you look unsure or overreactive. And if you confront them, they'll shrug, smile, say, "Relax, I was only joking." But it's not a joke, it's a tactic. They want to make you question yourself publicly because they couldn't break you privately. It's not about humor, it's about shame. Because shame, when internalized, creates silence, and silence is where manipulation thrives. This is where Stoicism sharpens your vision. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know the truth." That one line is your shield. You don't defend yourself in every room. You don't fight for approval. You stay rooted in what's real and let the noise pass like wind. Let me tell you about Claire. She worked under a manager who couldn't intimidate her privately. She was grounded, direct, and self-respecting, so he started undermining her during meetings. One day, after another sarcastic jab, she paused, then calmly said, "Working late isn't a badge. It's a system failure." No raised voice, no bitterness, just clarity. The room shifted, because truth, even quiet truth, makes noise of its own. So when someone tries to shame you in front of others, don't explain, don't defend. Breathe, hold your ground, say less, but let it cut clean. Because when shame doesn't land, they lose their weapon. And when the crowd sees that, they start noticing who's really in control and who's just performing. 2. They play the victim. When manipulation stops working, the story changes fast. Suddenly, the one who pushed your boundaries, who controlled the narrative, who drained you emotionally, becomes the victim. The shift is subtle at first. Where once they were dominant, now they're confused. Where they used to accuse, now they don't understand what happened. And where they once controlled you directly, now they control the story around you. This is not regret, it's redirection. The manipulator knows they've lost their grip on you, so they try to influence how others see you. You start hearing things like, "I don't know what's going on with them. They've changed." Or, "I just wish we could go back to how things used to be." It's performative vulnerability, designed not to reconnect, but to create confusion. Their narrative becomes emotionally loaded, but carefully constructed to make you seem like the cold one, the selfish one, the villain who just walked away for no reason. And this tactic is brutal because it doesn't just manipulate people. It manipulates your sense of justice. Suddenly, you're left wondering if you should explain yourself to others, clear your name, undo the damage. But here's where Stoicism draws the line. You are not responsible for managing someone else's false version of you. Epictetus said, "He who blames others has a long way to go on his journey." A person who weaponizes victimhood has stopped growing. They don't want resolution. They want to reclaim control through sympathy, through guilt, through distortion. And your strength threatens that more than any argument ever could. I think of Lauren, who was in a long-term relationship where she constantly gave more than she received. When she finally chose herself, set boundaries, said no, stopped explaining, her partner didn't confront her directly. He simply rewrote the script, told mutual friends she had changed, made it seem like she'd become cold, distant, and unreasonable. But Lauren didn't chase the lie. She didn't call every friend and try to explain. She just kept living her truth calmly and clearly, and over time, the people who mattered saw the pattern for themselves. Because real stories don't need defending, they just need time. So when someone plays the victim to twist your strength into cruelty, here's what you do. Stay calm, stand firm, let your life speak. You don't owe explanations to people who weren't there for the truth. And you don't need to shrink just because someone else feels small in the face of your self-respect. Their story may be louder for a while, but yours, if rooted in clarity, will always be the one that lasts. 3. They spread subtle lies. When direct manipulation no longer works, they switch to whispers, not the loud, obvious kind, the subtle kind that slips into rooms you're not in, into conversations you're not part of. The manipulator doesn't launch attacks. They plant seeds, and they're patient because they know it doesn't take a scandal to ruin you. It just takes enough doubt to make people pause before trusting you. They won't say, "You can't trust them." They'll say, "Something just feels off." They won't accuse you of anything specific. They'll just ask questions, twist a past detail, imply a tone you didn't use, then walk away before anyone can challenge them. These are not careless comments. They are calculated narratives. Quiet character assassination in slow motion. And the worst part, it's hard to defend yourself against a whisper, because the more you chase the rumor, the more it looks like you're hiding something. That's the trap. They want you rattled, scattered, explaining yourself to people who never asked for an explanation. They want you to look unstable. That's the sabotage. But Stoicism offers a sharper, more effective response. Don't chase distortion. Stand in consistency. Seneca said, "The truth is simple. Lies require complication." And that's your anchor. The manipulator needs the lie to do the work for them. But you don't need to respond to every manipulation. You just need to live in such a way that the lies collapse on their own. Let me tell you about Eric. He turned down a request from a colleague to cut corners on a big project. It was a firm no, clear, ethical, unshakable. And that's when the gossip began. Not attacks, just subtle shifts in tone from others. Little comments like, "Eric's been acting a bit territorial, hasn't he?" Or, "I heard he's not easy to work with these days." Nothing direct, but enough to change the energy. Eric didn't spiral. He didn't run around asking who said what. He focused on the work, showed up, kept his boundaries tight, spoke with integrity, and over time, the fog cleared. Because when people compared the whispered version of him to the real one, the truth won. Not instantly, but completely. So when someone distorts reality around you, let them. You don't fight shadow with shadow. You bring light. And your actions, if steady and grounded, become undeniable over time. They can say what they want, but when your truth doesn't move, their lies won't last. 4. They try to isolate you. When manipulation starts to fail, the next move is almost always the same. Isolation. Not in the obvious way. They don't lock you out. They pull others away from you little by little, whisper by whisper. Their goal isn't to be the villain. It's to make you feel alone, unstable, disconnected. Because people who feel isolated are easier to control, easier to doubt themselves, easier to bring back under influence. They won't tell your friends to abandon you outright. That's too obvious. Instead, they'll change the temperature in the room. Subtle comments, strategic silences. They'll say things like, she's just been different lately. Or, have you noticed how he's always on edge? They won't accuse, they'll imply. And the people around you, unless they're paying attention, may not even realize they're being nudged. They'll just start pulling away, unsure why, until one day you look around and the connections you relied on feel distant. It's not personal, it's strategic, because when you're surrounded by people who affirm your value, manipulation becomes impossible. But when those voices are silenced, when the room feels colder, when you begin to question your own belonging, that's when control creeps back in. Stoic philosophy counters this with strength not in numbers, but in presence. Seneca said, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you." That's not just a suggestion about your circle. It's a reminder to protect your relationships from corrosion. When you notice someone trying to isolate you, don't respond with paranoia. Respond with truth. Show up. Stay kind. Keep your integrity sharp and visible. Let me tell you about Jenna. She was part of a close project team. As she grew more assertive, setting boundaries, saying no to unrealistic deadlines, one teammate, threatened by her clarity, started turning others against her. Subtle shifts, casual remarks. Jenna's been kind of intense lately, hasn't she? And slowly, the energy shifted. Meetings got quieter, collaborations felt strained. But Jenna didn't confront anyone in a panic. She didn't beg for reassurance. She kept showing up with value, with clarity, with calm. And over time, the people who were starting to drift began to see the difference between what was said about her and who she actually was. The manipulator's web unraveled not because she fought it, but because it couldn't compete with her consistency. So when someone tries to isolate you, don't fight the illusion with desperation. Fight it with presence. Strengthen your real bonds. Reaffirm your place by how you show up, not by how loudly you defend it. Because those who are meant to stand with you will see through the fog, and those who don't were never standing with you to begin with. 5. They use guilt to control you. Guilt is one of the most effective tools in a manipulator's arsenal. It doesn't yell. It doesn't confront. It quietly slips under your skin, wraps itself around your conscience, and makes you feel like the villain in your own story. But it's not rooted in truth. It's rooted in leverage. Because when they can't control you with fear or flattery, they try something more subtle. They make you feel like you owe them your obedience. It sounds like, "After everything I've done for you," or "I guess none of it mattered to you, did it?" They don't argue with facts. They argue with your empathy. They target your compassion, not your logic. And before you know it, you're doing things not because you want to, but because you're afraid not to. That's not love. That's emotional blackmail. Guilt, when used by someone with bad intentions, isn't about right or wrong. It's about bending you until you break. They know you're thoughtful. They know you care. And instead of respecting that, they weaponize it. You end up saying yes when you mean no, overextending yourself and second-guessing every boundary you try to set, not because it's wrong, but because they've made you feel like it is. This is where Stoicism becomes a lifeline. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And that includes emotional freedom, especially from guilt that's been engineered to keep you compliant. A Stoic learns to pause in those moments and ask a simple question. Is this guilt coming from truth or from control? Danielle, for example, had a relative who constantly used guilt to pull her back into old patterns. When she took a job out of state, her aunt didn't say congratulations. She said, "I guess family doesn't matter anymore." When Danielle couldn't show up to every favor or gathering, she was met with, "Wow, after everything I've done for you." It worked for years, until Danielle asked herself a question that changed everything. Would I ever speak to someone I love the way she speaks to me? That answer broke the spell. She stopped responding out of guilt and started moving from self-respect. So when someone tries to guilt you into submission, do this. First, pause. Guilt thrives on immediacy. Second, separate their feelings from your responsibilities. You are not responsible for managing someone else's discomfort with your boundaries. And third, speak from calm truth. Set your limits, not with anger, but with certainty. Because someone who truly values you won't need to make you feel small to keep you close. And someone who uses guilt to manipulate you doesn't want partnership. They want control. Reclaim your mind. Reclaim your choices and remind yourself boundaries are not betrayals. They are the language of self-respect. 6. They try to destroy your confidence, and when nothing else works, not guilt, not shame, not manipulation, a toxic person may resort to one of the cruelest tactics of all, breaking down your confidence piece by piece. They don't need to shout to do it. They do it with subtlety, disguised as jokes, as concern, as advice. It's not, "You're a failure." It's, "Are you sure that's the best idea?" Or, "I just don't want you to get your hopes up." This isn't about helping you grow. It's about shrinking your belief in yourself so you become easier to control again. Because once they lose influence over your choices, the next goal is to make sure you stop trusting those choices altogether. They want you second-guessing, hesitating, waiting for approval you no longer need. They want you to feel like your strength is dangerous, your independence is naive, and your ambition is unrealistic. But here's the truth. No one who genuinely wants the best for you will ever feel threatened by your growth. The person who mocks your progress, minimizes your wins, or questions your every move isn't being honest. They're being strategic. They know if you continue on your path, you'll outgrow their control, so they try to bring you back, not with chains, but with doubts. This is where Stoicism meets fire. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Your confidence isn't something they can steal unless you hand it over. It's not given to you by praise, and it shouldn't be taken by quiet attacks. It lives in your clarity, in your choices, in your resilience. Chris learned this the hard way. In a relationship that slowly wore him down, his partner never raised her voice, but always raised an eyebrow. Whenever he succeeded, it came with a cold compliment. "Must be nice to know the right people." When he made bold decisions, she'd ask, "You really think that's a smart move?" At first he brushed it off, but over time those comments added up. He started shrinking, questioning himself, until one day a friend said the words that woke him up, "You're not yourself anymore." That was the mirror he needed. So here's what you do when someone tries to erode your confidence. Recognize that it's intentional. Subtle harm is still harm. Reinforce your mind. Write down your wins. Remember your strength. Revisit your truth. And protect your environment. Surround yourself with people who speak clarity into you, not confusion. Because your confidence doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be yours. And once you stop outsourcing it, no one can tear it down. You didn't come this far just to be reduced by someone else's fear of your strength. Reclaim it, carry it, and let it speak louder than their doubts ever could. 7. They offer fake reconciliation. When every tactic fails, the guilt trips, the public shaming, the subtle lies, there's one final move the manipulator will reach for: false peace. Suddenly, they're kind again, soft-spoken, reflective. They say things like, "I've been doing a lot of thinking," or "I just want us to be good again." And for a moment, it feels real, because you want it to be real. After all the conflict, all the damage, the idea of peace is tempting, but this isn't healing. It's strategy. The manipulator hasn't changed. They've just adapted. What they're really saying is, "Let me back in, so I can reset the game." The charm returns. The apologies seem heartfelt. The tone is different. But if you look closely, the core hasn't shifted. The goal is still control. The script may sound gentler, but the plot is the same. And here's what makes this move dangerous. It plays directly on your desire to believe the best in people. It exploits your compassion, your hope, your need for closure. But a Stoic knows hope without observation is a trap. You don't heal by walking back into the fire that burned you. You heal by seeing it clearly, then stepping away, not with bitterness, but with truth. Epictetus said, "He who does not observe deceit is not truly wise." Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting the pattern. It means choosing peace, your peace, without reopening the wound. It means acknowledging change, not in words, but in long-term, consistent action. And if that consistency doesn't exist, then the apology is just a new disguise for an old pattern. Take Naomi. She walked away from a manipulative ex after years of emotional control. She set boundaries. She grew. And just when she was beginning to breathe clearly again, he reached out, gentle, apologetic, vulnerable. He told her he'd changed, that he was in therapy, that he missed what they had. At first it seemed sincere, but it didn't take long for the patterns to return. Small criticisms, casual guilt, passive control, different tone, same trap. That's when Naomi understood. Healing isn't measured by what someone says when they want back in. It's measured by what they did when they had access. And real change, the kind that earns another chance, doesn't rush the process. It respects your distance. So when someone who once manipulated you suddenly becomes soft, pause. Don't rush in. Look for patterns, not apologies. Ask yourself, do I want this person in my life, or do I just miss the version they're pretending to be? That answer will save you from repeating the cycle. At the end of the day, the strongest boundary is this: I believe in change, but I believe in evidence more. Forgive if it gives you peace. But don't forget what their behavior taught you. You escaped once. You grew once. You don't owe anyone a return to the version of yourself they once controlled. Let peace be real, and let it begin with you. Conclusion. When a manipulator loses control, they don't surrender. They shift. They evolve. They adapt their tactics, not because they've changed, but because you have. The moment you stop bending, the moment you stop chasing their approval, the panic sets in. Not in you, in them. Because your clarity threatens the illusion they depended on. They shame, then smile. They whisper, then weep. They play the villain, then the victim, then the savior. All in the same breath. But every move has one purpose: to bring you back under control. Not because they miss you, because they miss what they could get from you when you didn't know better. But now you do, and Stoicism gives you more than peace. It gives you precision. It trains your attention, sharpens your observation, and teaches you to respond without unraveling. It reminds you that your value isn't up for debate, your boundaries aren't up for negotiation, and your clarity is your greatest form of protection. You don't need to argue. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to explain your truth to people committed to misunderstanding it. You simply stand. You live. You keep your mind steady and your path quiet. And eventually the noise fades. The stories collapse. The people who were never real fall away. So what have we learned? That shame doesn't work on those who no longer feel guilty for choosing themselves. That lies don't last in the face of a life lived with integrity. That control doesn't work on people who no longer need permission to be at peace. If someone had to manipulate you to feel powerful, your freedom is their greatest loss. So stay grounded, stay watchful, but don't stay small. And if this message struck something in you, if you recognized even one tactic, one pattern, one truth that made you breathe deeper, drop a comment below saying, "I see through it." Let's make clarity louder than manipulation. And if you're building a life where peace isn't just a pause between attacks, but a daily practice, hit like, hit subscribe, and keep walking with us. You're not alone, you're just waking up. And that, my friend, is the beginning of power.